Long ago, there was a little boy in a village. Day after day, he faced abuse from his father. With no one to guide him, his sorrow turned into rage. He became bitter, lonely, and outcast. The more detached he became, the less the villagers liked him, ostracizing him even more. His love of the sword led him to the way of the warrior, but the world rejected him, calling him a demon child. His rage and envy consumed him, eventually leading to him becoming the demon that everyone made him out to be. And yet, despite all the struggle, all the shit that life had thrown at him, he succeeded in achieving his goal, becoming invincible under the sun, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history. How did a young, lonely boy manage to achieve this, and how can we achieve the same? Meet Shinmen Takezo, a Ronin, a social outcast from childhood. After losing the Battle of Sekigahara, he went into hiding, changing his name. In his many years of solitude, he forged himself into the greatest Japanese swordsman to ever live. You may not know this name, but you will know his new name. His name was Miyamoto Musashi. This short story hopefully serves to illustrate what Miyamoto Musashi's life was like. Alone, trapped in his own thoughts, surrounded by wilderness, something almost every modern man can relate to, except the wilderness part, of course. I know it's certainly something that I can relate to. Ever since I was a teenager, I've always felt this sense of loneliness. I don't know if it was because of technology or because of my parents always constantly arguing and never socializing with everyone, or maybe it was a combination of those things and other factors, but I've always felt lonely. Even if I had friends, they never really matched my values, except for a few exceptions, of course. I never really had a father figure to look up to, so I was always stuck alone to figure out things on my own. And for the longest time, I always hated it. I mean, I nearly off myself because of it. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but I used to cut myself. That was before I discovered Musashi and other figures like Hamza, but I'll focus on Musashi for now. These principles of Dokudo have really helped change my life and create a sense of discipline and order and purpose in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for them. Hopefully by sharing it to you, you can use them to improve your life as well. Miyamoto Musashi was Japan's greatest swordsman, namely a kensei, which sounds extremely badass, I know. He had an undefeated record of 61 duels, created a Niten Ichi Ryu style of fighting that was famous for its use of two swords, and later in his life became a philosopher that wrote two influential books, Gori no Sho, or the Book of Five Rings, and the subject of this video, Dokudo, literally translating to the path of aloneness. Dokudo is a scroll containing 21 precepts or principles that Musashi wrote towards the end of his life. Musashi wanted to guide people like him, people like us, to live a satisfying life when forced to be alone. No one wants to be alone, and I doubt neither did Musashi. From a young age, the mountains were his home, being shunned by the village he grew up in. Well, maybe we haven't experienced the same level of social exclusion as Musashi. I can tell you for sure that you felt this kind of loneliness before because you clicked on this video, and so has most of Gen Z. Statistically, it's the most lonely generation of all. Urbanization has caused a nucleation of community, reducing us to porn-addicted, over-consuming individuals. I never really wanted to be alone, but I am. So why should we continue to be alone? I would argue that while yes, everyone needs friends to socialize, by viewing this period of loneliness as an opportunity and taking the appropriate actions to make use of it, you can emerge from the other end of loneliness as a changed and powerful man, just like Musashi. I'll reveal exactly the secrets that Musashi used to achieve his results in just a few seconds. But a quick note before we move on. There aren't many sources to give a factual account of Musashi's early life, but I like to imagine it was similar to the fictional account given by the manga Vagabond by Takehiko Inoue. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So all the panels you see and the stories I tell you about Musashi are all largely based off of this manga. Now let's look at those principles. Accept everything just the way it is. I know this extremely short principle may seem anticlimactic and obvious, but trust me, there's a lot to learn here. Accept the fact that you are lonely and don't think that this is necessarily bad. Emotions cloud your reasoning. Everyone is prone to changing their perceptions of reality because of pain, fear, anger, etc. But it's important for you to take a step back and, as Jocko Wilink coined it, detach from the present moment and analyze every situation objectively.
So being able to take a step back, detach, and see the bigger picture, to me, is the true superpower of life. And it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Do this actionable step every time you feel overwhelmed. Literally take a step back, breathe in and out deeply until you've calmed your nerves. Then put aside your emotions for a second and just analyze just the facts. Then analyze your emotions and determine what they're trying to tell you. Then take action. This action of detachment is extremely powerful. Jocko even credits it for his huge success he accomplished in his battles in Ramadi. I think it's no coincidence that Musashi and Jocko, both amazing warriors, share similar thoughts. I think this principle also extends to more than just analyzing the outside world and stressful situations. It also reminds me to stay humble and accept that I don't know much and I'm not that skillful. It reminds me to set aside my ego and pursue what's best for me. For example, if a child is much better at something and the child shows you how to do your job, most people would take this as an insult and shame the child. But I would set aside my ego and learn from the child, because age is a little determining factor for skill. A quote springs to my mind: every man is superior to me in one way or another. Lastly, this principle also reminds me to accept death. The way of the warrior is to resolutely accept death. Jocko talks about this in his podcast, where he says that he thinks of nothing else but his mission and goes into each mission not expecting to come back alive. You need to accept the random and seemingly cruel nature of life. This is an idea echoed in Stoic philosophy, where, for example, Marcus Aurelius states that there is, in fact, nothing cruel about nature. It has no moral value. Death is simply a fact of nature, and to accept death is to be free from its fear and to live life as you wish. There's no point in living a life that isn't fulfilling to you. Trust me, this is what happens when you live an unfulfilling life. Keeping death in mind helps you to appreciate and savor life. Memento mori. Accept everything just the way it is, without assigning morals, and you'll soon find yourself more at peace with loneliness. Loneliness hurts a lot, but this is your life. You are lonely, and you will continue to be lonely unless you take action. Accept this fact. Do not regret what you've done. This principle came as a surprise to me when I first read it, because I used to regret a lot. If you could have one superpower in this world, what would it be? For me, the answer was always time travel, because I was an anxious teenager who lived my life constantly thinking about regrets in my past and wishing I could change things. But what I failed to realize was that it's those same mistakes that brought me to where I am now. And if things were different in the past, maybe I might not be where I am today. The Dalai Lama says, when you lose, do not lose the lesson. In other words, learn from your mistakes. I've slowly realized that to give even a single thought on a past mistake beyond that of self-analysis and introspection is a complete waste of time. There are two reasons for this. Firstly, it takes your mind away from the present moment and your focus on the way, Musashi's term for your life's work or purpose. Secondly, what might seem like a mistake in retrospect may actually turn out to be a blessing in disguise in the future. You never know. I never knew that while I felt at the time it was a mistake to be rejected from MIT and Harvard, that would actually turn out to be a blessing, because I've learned so much about life and met many interesting people coming here to my current school, which may have never happened if I went to those colleges. When you're lonely, it is easy for negative thoughts to pile up, and remembering to always be empathetic towards yourself and not regret anything you've done, while also learning from mistakes and being responsible, of course, can go a long way towards not going crazy. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. This is a big one. You notice that many religions and many of the great figures in history, and even the modern day, always preach this lesson. That's because abstinence is such a powerful action, especially in the modern day where overindulgence in pretty much every vice has become the norm. Epic Taiko says, in the long term, the victory of abstaining from pleasure is greater than to be overpowered by it. Trust me when I say that engaging in pleasurable activities, just to feel that dopamine hit, can absolutely destroy you if you're a guy like me. One of the biggest reasons for my depression was corn and video games, both activities that completely inundate you with pleasure. You might argue that it's fine to engage in these activities every once in a while, but I disagree. If we were the kind of people that could engage in corn and video games every once in a while and still have a healthy life, we wouldn't be questioning how much we should play or beat that meat. So just stop. There are 3 ways we seek pleasure that we must give up to make progress in our journey. 1, probably the most important as a high testosterone man, is lust. As a man, you will naturally lust, but this feeling of lust will more often than not misguide you to make stupid decisions that only hinder your overall progress to your goals. Like, why should you go to that party and get drunk for a very slight chance of cooler when you know it's going to destroy your productivity and health for the next several days? Like, literally, it just makes no sense at all if you really think about it. If you really look at the root cause for any action that a young man takes, it can all be attributed to the need for sleeping with women, even abstinence and self-improvement. But allowing yourself to seek out short-term pleasurable one-night stands will stop you from finding the kind of long-term love and intimacy that you're truly seeking. If you want more information on that, Hamza has created highly informative guides on these topics. 2. Food and gluttony. Research has shown that your diet plays a huge role in your mental and physical health. Yet people still eat things that they know are unhealthy but pleasurable, like sweet desserts. You must be different and take charge of your health and what you eat. There are loads of guides on this, so I won't go into too much detail. But essentially, you need to treat your food as a means of sustenance rather than a method of pleasure. 3. Consumption of goods and services. By this I mean buying things that we don't need for fun, including playing video games. Musashi calls for us to be detached from all our possessions. This means that you don't hold sentimental value for anything you possess, and if you were to lose everything tomorrow, you would be fine. This is true freedom. True happiness comes from the pursuit of the way, and deriving happiness from objects is just sabotaging your own happiness. Never resent, be jealous, or complain. As one who walks alone, an outcast, it's easy to look at the rest of society and immediately be filled with jealousy, envy, and hatred. Jealous of those who enjoy love and intimacy, while we have none. Jealous of those with wealth and fame, while we are worthless to society. But these feelings are only distractions from the pursuit of our goals. Complaining about circumstances and resenting things that are out of your control are complete wastes of time. All we can do is to focus on what we can control and our pursuit of the way. I should note here that being envious is not a bad thing. Envy is an emotion that tells you that you have some need that has not been met, and that someone else has a thing that meets your need. You can leverage this to motivate yourself. For example, if you're envious of someone's expensive car, you're really envious of their financial freedom. You can use this desire to motivate yourself. Do not act on partial feelings. This is a short one and pretty self-explanatory. Don't make decisions solely based on feelings. Remain stoic. Emotions are important, but they should only serve as data points in your decision-making, along with logic. When you allow your emotions to control you, you'll find your life chaotic and unpredictable, making it difficult to make progress. So use discipline to control your life during solitude. Think little of yourself and deeply of the world. Stay humble. You are nothing more than an average human being trying to serve society in the best way possible. Never let yourself be saddened by separation. This principle teaches me two things. One is the importance of the people you surround yourself with, and the other is the importance of letting go. For one who is alone and doesn't have secure relationships, it is easy for us to become too attached and cling on to anyone who's willing to give us a shred of their attention, without really thinking about whether those relationships will truly help us with pursuing our goals. Hence, it's prudent of us to analyze our friendships and make sure that we have the right friends. Here, a bad friend doesn't necessarily mean one who is set out to consciously hurt you. In fact, that would be an enemy. A bad friend could be someone who, in good intention, simply distracts you from your goals and pushes you back. You probably have friends like this, the kind of people who push you to drink at parties or ask you to hang out with them, wasting time on pointless indulgence when you know you have deadlines coming up. People often underestimate what effect their friends have on them. There's a common saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So really make sure that the relationships you foster, as well as the figures you look up to, are people that push you towards your success and ultimate life fulfillment and happiness, instead of holding you back. Our period of solitude will only be temporary. We are ultimately striving to find and develop those 10 out of 10 friendships and relationships, which will take time. But even when we do find these relationships, it's important to never cling on to them and allow them to be our entire source of happiness. We must be aware that all things, including people, are temporary and come and go in our lives. Being saddened by someone who has left serves us no purpose except to occupy our hearts and distract us from work. Instead, cherish the time you have together and be grateful while being able to let go easily. In all things, have no preferences and be indifferent to where you live. These principles remind me that ultimately my happiness is within and completely in my control. Outside factors are things I largely cannot control, so it's pointless to worry about them. The only thing I can focus on is myself and my improvement, so that's what I'll do. You can only fight the way you practice. We don't rise to our expectation, but fall to our training. Train hard and train the right things, and you will achieve your expectations. Do not act based on customary beliefs. Don't rely on social norms to guide your actions, because most people are average and you don't want to be average. It's easy to get pulled into the script of getting good grades, into a good university, good job, good wife, a good house and car. But if that script worked for us, we wouldn't be here. Do not collect weapons or practice with weapons beyond what is useful. Prioritize the actions you need to take to achieve your goal. Ask yourself this: if you could only work for 2 hours a week to achieve your goal, what would you do? Do not count on God or others to better your life. I think people really underestimate just how much having God, other than yourself, in your life can truly help pursue the right path to happiness. I used to be an atheist and thought that God was stupid, until I realized that the most disciplined and fulfilled people I knew were all religious, and the values in religion are literally the origin of the values put forth by modern self-improvement. I mean, prayer is literally a form of loving gratitude meditation, and religion has preached for many years the importance of abstinence. But despite all this, you need to keep in mind that you can only really rely on yourself in this world, and maybe your mother. Never stray from the way. Lastly, and the most important one, the way is whatever you want it to be. For Musashi, this was sword fighting. By committing to it wholeheartedly and never straying from the way of the sword, Musashi was able to achieve greatness. Likewise, you should commit yourself wholeheartedly to mastering your craft, your way, and achieve something beyond yourself. This is the true path to happiness. Not money or clout or woman. Self-mastery will give you the ultimate peace. People are a distraction to your inner thoughts, and it's only through being alone and confronting those demons head-on without the use of escapism that you can truly make progress. Being alone is better than being in bad company. Make use of your solitude. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.